The scent of betrayal was still fresh in Fiona Lockhart's memory as she pulled her sleek Aston Martin into the small town parking lot. A full 300 miles from the high-rise condo she called home. 6 months had passed since her ex-fiancé's scheme to steal her software company had been uncovered. Yet trust remained a luxury she could no longer afford. Rain pattered against the windshield as Fiona stared at the quaint storefront before her. Baker's Dozen was nothing like the upscale patisseries she frequented in the city. But her assistant had sworn this was the place to find the most life-changing cinnamon rolls in America. After the week, she'd had firing her CFO for embezzlement and fending off another hostile takeover attempt. Even Fiona had to admit she needed something life-changing, even if it came in pastry form. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully as she entered, the warm aroma of butter and sugar enveloping her like a forgotten childhood memory. Despite the early hour, the bakery buzzed with locals. Behind the counter, a tall man with broad shoulders and flour-dusted forearms worked with practiced precision, his focus absolute as he piped intricate designs onto a wedding cake. "Just a minute," he called without looking up, his voice deep and warm. Fiona watched, oddly transfixed by the careful way his large hands managed such delicate work. He wore simple jeans and a faded T-shirt beneath his apron, nothing like the designer suits that populated her corporate world. "Sorry about the wait," he said, finally looking up with a genuine smile that reached his hazel eyes. "What can I get for you this morning?" "I've been told I need to try your cinnamon rolls," Fiona replied, surprised by the softness in her own voice. "Ah, a first-timer?" His grin widened. "I'm Seth Forrester, owner and head baker. You're not from around here." It wasn't a question, but Fiona answered anyway. "Just passing through, I'm Fiona." Seth's gaze lingered on her designer trench coat and the diamond studs in her ears before he nodded. "Well, Fiona, just passing through, you picked the right day. Fresh batch just came out." As he turned to retrieve her order, a small whirlwind burst through the swinging door behind the counter. A little girl, no more than 7, with the same hazel eyes as Seth, but dark curls bouncing around her shoulders. "Daddy, I finished my math homework," she announced triumphantly, waving a worksheet. Seth immediately crouched to her level. "That's my smart cookie. Let me see." He examined the page with serious consideration before giving an approving nod. "Perfect, Maya, I knew you could do it." The girl beamed before noticing Fiona. "Hello," she said with surprising poise, extending her small hand across the counter. "I'm Maya Forrester. I help my daddy sometimes." Fiona found herself shaking the child's hand. "I'm Fiona. It's nice to meet you, Maya." "You're pretty," Maya declared, "like a princess in my books." Seth straightened, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. "Maya, remember what we said about indoor voices, and shouldn't you be getting ready for school?" "But Aunt Jenny's still in the bathroom, and I'm all ready except for my hair," Maya protested. "Then go wait by the door. Mrs. Peterson will be here any minute for the carpool." With a dramatic sigh that only a 7-year-old could master, Maya trudged toward the door, then turned back. "Don't forget, Daddy, you promised to come to my science fair today." 3 o'clock sharp, Seth confirmed. "I wouldn't miss it." After Maya stationed herself by the window, Seth turned back to Fiona with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that. Single dad life not always the most professional way to run a business." "She's charming," Fiona said truthfully. "You must be proud. Every day." He handed over a paper bag and a coffee. "One life-changing cinnamon roll, as promised. The coffee's on the house. You look like you could use it. No offense." Fiona almost declined. She wasn't accustomed to charity, but something in his straightforward manner stopped her. "Thank you. It's been a long week. Those happen." He nodded toward an empty table by the window. "Feel free to stay and enjoy it. Sometimes a quiet moment is the best medicine." Before Fiona could respond, the door burst open and a harried woman in her 30s rushed in. "Seth." The delivery truck broke down. The Henderson wedding cake isn't going to make it to, she stopped abruptly, noticing Fiona. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, Jenny, Seth said, his expression shifting from relaxed to concerned. When and where? 4:30 at the lakeside venue, 40 minutes away. Seth ran a hand through his hair. Maya's science fair is at 3, I can't miss that. I tried calling Mitch to see if he could drive it, but he's out sick, Jenny explained, glancing anxiously at the clock. Fiona found herself speaking before she could reconsider. I could drive it. Both Seth and Jenny turned to her with identical expressions of surprise. I mean, Fiona continued, surprising herself, I'm not doing anything this afternoon, and I have a car. I could deliver the cake if that would help. That's incredibly kind, Seth said slowly, but I couldn't ask a customer to do that. You didn't ask, I offered. Fiona took a sip of her coffee, maintaining a casual air despite her own bewilderment at her proposal. Consider it payment for the coffee. A 3-tiered wedding cake is worth more than a $3 coffee, Seth pointed out, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. Then I'll expect exceptional service the next time I'm in town, Fiona countered, unsure why she was implying there would be a next time. Jenny looked between them. Seth, we don't really have options here. After a moment's hesitation, Seth nodded. If you're sure, thank you. I'll be back at 4, Fiona said, gathering her things. Enjoy your daughter's science fair. As she left, Fiona caught a glimpse of Seth's grateful smile, and something warm unfurled in her chest, something she'd thought had withered permanently after Richard's betrayal. 4 hours later, Fiona returned to find Seth closing up shop early. He'd changed into a button-down shirt and khakis, looking both more formal and more approachable. You actually came back, he said, relief evident in his voice. I said I would. Fiona shrugged, as if keeping promises to strangers was something she did every day. Seth led her to the kitchen where an immaculate white cake waited in a specialized transport box. Jenny will meet you at the venue to help set it up. I can't thank you enough for this. It's nothing, Fiona insisted. How was the science fair? Seth's face lit up. Maya won first place with her plant growth experiment. She's spending the night at her friend's house to celebrate. Congratulations, Fiona said sincerely. You must have quite the scientist on your hands. She wants to be a botanist one week, an astronaut the next. Seth carefully loaded the cake into Fiona's car. Kids, right? The world is wide open to them. Must be nice, Fiona murmured. Thinking of her own rigid path from business school to boardroom, Seth studied her for a moment. Have dinner with me tonight, he said suddenly. As a proper thank you, Fiona blinked, caught off guard. I don't know if nothing fancy, Seth added quickly. But you're doing me a huge favor and I make a mean lasagna, unless you need to get back to wherever you came from. The responsible answer would be yes. Fiona had meetings on Monday, reports to review over the weekend. Yet something about Seth's straightforward invitation made all those obligations seem less pressing. I'd like that, she heard herself say. 4 hours later, after successfully delivering the wedding cake and receiving tearful thanks from the bride, Fiona found herself on the porch of a modest 2-story house at the edge of town. Seth greeted her with a glass of wine and a genuine smile that made her pulse quicken in a way that was both unfamiliar and exhilarating. Welcome to the Forrester home, he said, ushering her inside. It's nothing like what you're probably used to, but it's home. The house was indeed modest, but charming hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, and walls lined with Maya's artwork and photographs. It spoke of a life well lived rather than perfectly curated. It's lovely, Fiona said honestly. How long have you lived here? 5 years, Seth replied, leading her to the kitchen where delicious aromas wafted from the oven. After Caroline, Maya's mom, passed away, we needed a fresh start. I'm sorry, Fiona said, watching as he checked the lasagna. Seth glanced up with a sad smile. Cancer, Maya was just 2. Some days it feels like a lifetime ago, other days. He shook his head. But we're doing okay. The bakery was Caroline's dream, actually. I was an accountant before, if you can believe it." "What made you change careers?" Fiona asked, genuinely curious. "Life's too short to spend it doing something that doesn't make you happy." Seth shrugged. "Caroline taught me that. After she died, I took her recipes, cashed in our savings, and opened Baker's Dozen. Best decision I ever made, even if the profit margins are slimmer than they were in accounting." As they ate dinner, Fiona found herself sharing more than she'd intended about her software company, the betrayal by her ex-fiancé, who had been her COO, and the walls she'd built around herself since then. "So that's why you're hiding out in a small town," Seth observed. Fiona stiffened. "I'm not hiding. Everyone hides sometimes," Seth said gently. "After Caroline died, I practically became a hermit. If it wasn't for Maya needing me, I might have stayed that way." His honesty disarmed her. "It's not hiding so much as regrouping. I needed space from the vultures circling my company." "Fair enough." Seth refilled her wine glass. "But it seems like a lonely way to live, always looking over your shoulder for the next betrayal." "Says the man whose bakery is named after a superstition," Fiona countered with a smile. Seth laughed. "Touché, but I like to think of it more as a promise: give people more than they expect and they'll come back." "Is that your business model? Generosity?" "It's my life model," Seth said simply. "Hasn't failed me yet." By the time they'd finished dessert, a chocolate soufflé that Seth had prepared earlier, Fiona realized 3 hours had passed in what felt like minutes. Conversation with Seth flowed naturally, without the calculation and positioning that characterized her interactions in the business world. "I should go," she said reluctantly, glancing at her watch. "I have a 3-hour drive back to the city." Seth walked her to her car, their steps slow in the cool evening air. "Will you come back?" he asked directly. Fiona hesitated. "I don't know, my life is complicated." "I'm pretty good with complicated," Seth replied. "And Maya would love to show you her science project." "I can't make any promises," Fiona said, but even as she spoke, she knew she was already calculating when she could return. Seth nodded, respecting her hesitation. "For what it's worth, I think you're remarkable, Fiona. Not because you're a successful CEO or because you saved my daughter's big day, but because despite everything, you still stopped to help a stranger." Before she could respond, Seth leaned in and gently pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief but electric, a promise of something neither of them had been looking for. "Drive safe," he said softly, stepping back. "And if you decide to come back, you know where to find us." Fiona's mind raced during the entire drive back to the city. By the time she reached her penthouse, she'd made 3 decisions. She would restructure her executive team to allow for more delegation. She would take her first actual vacation in 6 years, and she would return to see Seth and Maya the following weekend. True to her word, Fiona returned the next weekend and the one after that. Each visit revealed new layers to Seth: his patience while teaching Maya to bake, his quiet generosity toward elderly customers who couldn't always pay, his determination to make his business succeed despite setbacks. For Maya's 8th birthday, Fiona helped Seth organize a botanical garden party, watching with unexpected joy as the little girl explored each exhibit with boundless enthusiasm. Later, as Maya fell asleep surrounded by her new science books, Seth took Fiona's hand. "You're amazing with her," he said quietly. "She adores you." "The feeling is mutual," Fiona admitted. "She's an extraordinary child." "She gets that from her mother," Seth said, a fond sadness in his eyes. "Caroline would have loved you, you know. She always said I needed someone who could challenge me." "Is that what I do?" Fiona asked. Seth laughed. "Every day, in the best possible way." 3 months into their relationship, reality intruded. A hostile takeover attempt forced Fiona to cancel a weekend visit, then another. Late-night phone calls replaced their weekend explorations of small-town life, and Seth's voice grew increasingly strained as weeks stretched between visits. "I understand your company needs you," he said one night, the distance palpable even through the phone. "But Maya keeps asking when you're coming back, and I don't have answers anymore." I'm trying, Seth, Fiona sighed, surrounded by legal documents in her home office. This isn't easy for me either. I know. His voice softened. I just miss you, we both do. The following week, Fiona's newly hired CFO discovered disturbing evidence the hostile takeover was being orchestrated by none other than Richard, her ex-fiancé. The discovery sent her into a spiral of work and paranoia, causing her to miss Seth's calls and respond to his texts with increasingly brief replies. When she finally surfaced from the crisis, 2 weeks later, having successfully thwarted Richard's attempt, she found a single voice message from Seth. I thought this could work, Fiona. His voice was heavy with resignation. But Maya and I can't live in limbo, waiting for moments of your time. I care about you more than I ever expected to, but we need someone who can be present in our lives, not just when it's convenient. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. The finality in his voice hit her like a physical blow. Fiona sat in her silent penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of success that suddenly seemed hollow. For the first time in her adult life, she questioned whether she'd chosen the right path. The next morning, Fiona called an emergency board meeting. 6 hours later, she emerged with a restructured leadership plan that included a co-CEO arrangement with her most trusted VP. By evening, she was in her car, driving the familiar route to Baker's Dozen with her heart in her throat. The bakery was closed when she arrived, but lights glowed from the apartment above. Gathering her courage, Fiona knocked on the side door that led to the residential stairs. Seth opened the door, surprise and wariness battling in his expression. Fiona. I made a mistake, she said without preamble. Several, actually. Seth leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I'm listening. I've spent the last 10 years building walls to protect myself and my company, Fiona said. After Richard's betrayal, those walls got higher. I convinced myself that success required sacrifice of relationships, of balance, of joy. Seth remained silent, his expression guarded. Then I met you and Maya, Fiona continued, her voice growing stronger. And for the first time in years, I remembered what it felt like to be part of something real, something that mattered more than quarterly reports and market valuations. We do matter, Fiona, Seth said quietly. That's why I had to end things. Maya's been through enough loss in her life. She doesn't need someone else who disappears. I know, Fiona nodded, tears threatening. And that's why I restructured my entire company yesterday. I've appointed a co-CEO. I'm stepping back to a strategic role that won't require 60-hour weeks or constant crisis management. Seth straightened, surprise evident in his features. You did what? I realized something when I heard your message, Fiona explained. I've been hiding behind my work, using it as an excuse to avoid the vulnerability that comes with real connection. But that's not living, it's existing. And you and Maya showed me the difference. That's a dramatic change, Seth said cautiously. Are you sure it's what you want? I've never been more certain, Fiona replied firmly. I want a chance to be part of your lives, really part of them, not just a weekend visitor. If you'll give me another chance. The door opened wider, revealing Maya in pajamas, her eyes widening at the sight of Fiona. You came back, she exclaimed, running forward to wrap her arms around Fiona's waist. Fiona's eyes met Seth's over Maya's head, a silent question in her gaze. After a moment that stretched like eternity, his expression softened and he stepped aside to let her in. We have a lot to talk about, he warned, but a smile tugged at his lips. I have time, Fiona promised, meaning it completely. In the months that followed, Fiona gradually integrated her life with Seth and Maya's. She rented a small cottage near their home, commuting to the city 3 days a week, while working remotely the rest of the time. The transition wasn't seamless, her co-CEO occasionally bristled at her input. And Seth sometimes struggled to understand the corporate world that had shaped her. But they worked through each challenge with honest communication and unwavering commitment. On Maya's 9th birthday, Seth proposed during a family picnic by the lake, with Maya bouncing excitedly beside them holding the ring. "We're a package deal," he said simply. "Always have been, always will be." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Fiona replied, tears of joy streaming down her face as she accepted the modest but perfect diamond. The wedding was held in the garden behind Baker's, 6 months later, a small, intimate affair with Maya, as the flower girl and Fiona's newly trusted executive team seated alongside Seth's community of loyal customers and friends. "I never thought I could trust again," Fiona admitted during their vows. "But you showed me that real love isn't about protecting yourself from pain, it's about finding someone worth being vulnerable with." Seth squeezed her hands. "And you showed me that starting over doesn't mean leaving the past behind, it means building something new that honors what came before. Maya and I weren't looking for someone to fill the space Caroline left, we were looking for someone to create a new space of her own. And you did." A year later, Fiona officially moved her company's headquarters to a renovated building in the center of town, bringing jobs and opportunity to the community that had given her a second chance at happiness. Seth expanded Baker's dozen to include a cafe that quickly became the heart of local business meetings and family gatherings alike. When their son was born 2 years after their wedding, they named him Cameron, a tribute to both Caroline's memory and the new beginning they'd created together. Maya, now 11 and every bit the proud big sister, took her responsibilities seriously, reading her brother's science books and helping Seth create special treats for family dinners. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Fiona and Seth would sit on their porch swing, watching the sunset over their small town. Sometimes they spoke of the future, Maya's growing interest in environmental science, Cameron's first steps, the bakery's continued success. Other times, they simply enjoyed the comfortable silence of two people who had found their way home. "Do you ever miss it?" Seth asked one such evening. "The high-powered CEO life, the penthouse, the glamour of it all?" Fiona considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the adrenaline," she admitted, "but I've never regretted my choice, not for a single day." Even when Maya had that science project meltdown last week and Cameron was teething at the same time, Seth teased. "Even then," Fiona laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Because at the end of every crazy day, I have a family that's real, a partnership that's honest, and a life that's truly mine. Not the one I thought I was supposed to want, but the one I actually need." Seth pressed a kiss to her temple. "Who would have thought that a life-changing cinnamon roll would actually change your life?" "I think it was the baker, not the pastry," Fiona smiled. "But don't let that go to your head." "Too late," Seth grinned, pulling her closer. "I already consider myself the luckiest man alive." As the stars emerged above them, Fiona reflected on the journey that had brought her here from suspicious millionaire to beloved wife and mother, from isolated executive to connected community member. The walls she'd built around her heart had crumbled, replaced by a home stronger than any fortress she could have designed. The trust she'd thought forever broken had healed, transformed into something more resilient and beautiful than before. And it had all begun with an unexpected detour, a small-town bakery, and a father who had shown her what true wealth really meant.